Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Okay.
The date is 2015 in Great Britain. A group of boys ages 14 and 16 decide to explore a well-known cave near their house. After hiking through the cave for a few hours, the worst thing possible happens. All of a sudden, it begins to rain really hard outside of the cave, causing the cave to flood inside. The kids were forced onto the high ground of the cave. They became trapped on a high ledge surrounded by water. After being reported missing by the parents of the children, police were able to find the kids' bikes outside the cave, and the cops, knowing the cave's flood after a heavy rain, they immediately called the local dive team to enter the cave and find the boys. After almost 12 hours of the dive team searching, they finally found the kids and proceeded to get the kids out of the cave and home safely. After hearing this story myself, I immediately knew what I wanted to do for my senior project, which is explore the other side of scuba diving and see how is scuba diving more than just a hobby and something a family does when they are on vacation, and see how scuba diving can save someone's life. Also, on top of exploring all that, I wanted to get my scuba diving license. Throughout my research, I learned different stuff about the field of scuba diving. I even found out that the state of New Hampshire has its own dive team. After a few emails being sent back and forth, I was able to get a meeting with an officer from the New Hampshire dive team. Me and him talked about all the different physical and mental tests you have to pass to be able to be on the dive team. After talking to him, I continued my research onto the military side of scuba diving. Something that was interesting was reading about the first ever woman diver in the military, and she talked about how they train in military for dives. She said training consists of many different situations being thrown at you. You and your dive team have to fix the problem and adapt to anything that happens while you're in the situations. These situations can be anything from recovering stuff from a crashed aircraft all the way to saving people from a sinking boat. You have to be prepared for any curveballs that can be thrown at you while you are out there as well. Then I began to learn about the water combat side of diving. To be cleared for combat in the water, you are selected out of the basic dive teams and trained for select missions that consist of water entry. To be on any dive team, though, either in the military or one like the New Hampshire, you have to be able to pass a basic physical test which consists of cardio and strength. Then you have to be a master diver. To be a master diver, it requires at least 100 open water dives, and then you then have to pass a test similar to the ones earlier where they could tell you there's a sinking car that you have to recover. What do you do? After learning all this about what it's like to be a professional diver, I have a new respect on diving and couldn't wait to get my diving license. The process of getting my license began a little shaky because I had to find a dive shop that worked around my schedule. At the time, I had football, and that meant I did not have a lot of free time because I'd have practices all week and then a game Saturday usually. But after calling 5 different dive shops, I found Aquatic Escapes Dive Center. I was then given all of my online information to take the STI online dive course. This is a 16-chapter course with each chapter having a quiz at the end of it, and you need to get 100 on the quiz to move on to the next chapter. Then, after all that, you have a final you need to get at least an 80 on to pass the entire course. I did all of that and got a 94 on the final in about 2 weeks. Throughout the course, I learned almost everything there is to scuba diving. I learned all about the gear, like a BCD, which is a device you use to control your buoyancy in the water. So basically that just keeps you floating in the water and keeps you at what distance you want to be up, what depth you want to be at. A regulator, which connects to your air tank and is what you use to breathe, so that just comes off your air tank and is what you breathe out of. Then I learned about a dive computer, which tells you the amount of air you have left and the depth you're at. That's usually something like when you go on vacation and dive, you don't really use it because you're not going super deep. But someone like me who's becoming a full diver, you have to be able to know what depths you're at because you have to know when to clear or not. I also had to learn about the marine life so I didn't harm them while diving and how to dive safely. Because when I'm diving, I'm in the fish's home, and if I go around and I'm picking up coral, rocks, and whatnot, and I break stuff off that shouldn't be broken, that can kill a whole habitat for an animal. And then if they leave, that can cause a chain effect, and then other fish could lose their source of food. One of the last things that I learned that kind of made me nervous to go scuba diving was something called the bends. The bends is a sickness that you can get while scuba diving. It's if you go down, when you go down very far in a deep depth, you have a lot of pressure on your body, and when you come up, the pressure releases, and if you come up too fast or shoot to the top of the water without taking increments and clearing at certain parts, you can eventually, you can get very sick from it, and it like turns like your insides, and you become almost like a really bad seasick. After completing my dive course online, I contacted my dive instructor to set up my 10 classes I had to do with him. Each class lasted about 2 hours, and it was really just a review of the online course because they really want to make sure you know what you're talking about and know what you're doing when you're going diving, because my dive instructor repeated a lot that man is really out of his element when he goes into the ocean. After I finished my 10 classes, I then had to continue the process and set up my pool dives, which is where you get to practice all of the different techniques you've been taught and then just practice being in the water and being comfortable in the water. The pool dives were honestly one of the coolest experiences in my life. I've never felt so calm and controlled in water before, and I've never felt just so relaxed before. The feeling of breathing underwater is like one of the coolest things I've ever done, and it was just kind of really surreal to do anything like that. The hardest part, definitely while I was doing these pool dives, was getting all the gear on. Everyone that I've talked to that's a diver told me that getting everything on and getting ready to go for a dive is the most annoying part, and getting wetsuits on and all that is just annoying because it gets very hot, and it's just, and everything's really tight on you. It's really heavy because you have to weigh yourself down to be able to sink, and then it's just a process that no one likes. But once you get in the water, it's just a really big relief, and that was something that I definitely experienced. Was just being, once you get in the water, it's just completely different, and one of the best things I've done. Now that I've finished my pool dives, I'm done with the whole scuba class. I'm just waiting until late spring when I can do my final SDI test to be a full diver and not just be a junior diver anymore. The only difference between a full diver and a junior diver is when I'm, as a junior diver, I need a full diver with me to go out into the ocean and do an open water dive. I just have to wait for weather to get a little bit better, and then I can go do my one open water dive with a SDI instructor watching me. And if I pass, then I can go do any open water dives whenever I want. After going through this whole process of diving and learning about it, I know I now have a new respect for divers. And with more than 200 people being saved a year to dive teams, I hope you guys view diving as more than just a hobby. Any questions?
How heavy is everything on total?
It depends what amount of weights you're putting on. When I was doing my pool dives, I think I had 15-pound weights, 3 around me, and then the tanks are probably 20 pounds, and then your BC is probably 5 pounds. So it's whatever. It's probably 30, 40 pounds. Yes. Any other questions? Londonderry. What? Oh, yeah.
Did you do any open water dives, or is it all?
No, I have to wait till spring when it's not below freezing, so the SDI people will go with me and do it, because I can't really, unless I get a dive my dive instructor to go with me to do open water dives, which he doesn't really do, I can't do any open water dives. I've just maxed out as a junior diver. Huh?
Had you been diving for a while, or is this a new?
No, my dad was, he's always talked about diving because he has his license, so it's always been something I've been interested in. And once I had to come up with a senior project, I thought this would be a good idea to finally be able to get my license.
All right, nice job.